All right, guys, it is the evening of October 28th, and we finally got set up here. And I was gonna come out here by myself, but my son, he's never been on camera. His name is Sterling. He said, "Dad, I want to go with you." So I thought, hey, this is great. So I got a partner with me, and where we're at is actually the anniversary of one of the shows that I did, and it's this show right here, and where two brothers at a campsite had an encounter early in the morning or late at night, October 28th, in this park at this very tent campsite. We're in Keystone State Park outside of Manford, Oklahoma, and it was just a torrential rainstorm today. I wasn't sure if it was going to end up like this, but we're under a wind advisory, and the lake is literally right behind us, and there's a steep cliff right here, and then it goes down to the shoreline. We got our tent set up, we got a campfire going, and so we're just getting ready to get settled in for the night. I've got camera equipment. My son has to work tomorrow, so again, we're not too far away from where from Tulsa, and of course I don't live too far away, so this really was a nice opportunity for me to take advantage of this, being the anniversary of this encounter site. I think we're the only ones in the campsite. One of the park attendants drove by a couple times, but here in a second, once we get our coals burnt down really nice, we're gonna take a drive up here. I know that there's tent campsites all along this tree line that is on the outer perimeter of the road, and then there's some up higher. I don't know how many there are, but we could be the only ones in the whole campsite area because it's starting to get cold. Today's high was, I think, maybe 59, 60. There's a cold front coming through tonight. The clouds are clearing up, so I've got a heater in the tent. And what makes this interesting is that now, what was here, the encounter site that the two brothers had was a DOGMAN encounter. It got right up to the tent site. It was between the fire and the tent. And if you can't recall that one, go ahead and go back to that episode and listen to that particular show. And what I'm going to do tonight is do some filming. I'll walk around and just see what we get. I've got a game camera. We know that very rarely do you get anything, but I still brought one for the back side of the tent. I've got an infrared camera. I've got this camera. I've got some walk around infrared cameras, like police cameras. And so we'll see. It's a long shot, but we'll see if anything bizarre happens. I highly doubt it. You probably fare better with a scratch-off lottery ticket, but since it's the anniversary, I thought, hey, I want to do this. I want to come here. I want to see what everything is like and just the experience. Normally, if we go out and camp, it's not where there's a bunch of people and where there's manicured, grass and things like this. So, but there's not many people here. Plus, just on a interesting, strange note, when I've done many of these interviews since 2017, there tends to be an increase in sightings, eyewitness sightings, and activity when there is different types of environmental weather changes. Cold fronts, windstorms, hailstorms, snowstorms, rainstorms. So tonight we've got a cold front coming through. It's going to get about 40 degrees. We have a windstorm, and we had a rainstorm earlier, so we're not due for any rain tonight, but we're under a wind advisory. So who knows? I'm willing to try it. And in the meantime, we're just going to have a good time. We're here for just one night. I wanted again to do this for the anniversary of this encounter sighting that the two brothers had of this creature, and just kind of get a perspective here and just see what it's like at night here. So, in the meantime, we're gonna let these coals burn down, get some water going, we'll get some Mountain House food going, and we'll come back here later and we'll see what happens. All right, guys, the wind is still fairly, I don't know, it's died down a little bit. It's, what time is it?
Oh, it's about coming up on 7.
It's about 7 o'clock here. And we've got some dehydrated food, some Mountain House food here, and the sun has set. So the temperature's gonna drop tonight, but we've got a nice, we've got some nice coals here. We've got some hot water going, and I've parked my Jeep that if anything starts moving around the tent, so to speak, I can hit my fob and the lights will shine right on the tent. I'm gonna set up the trail cam here, and I'm gonna take some footage tonight. And I don't expect my son to stay up because he's gotta work tomorrow, but I'll be up back and forth filming out here around the fire and just kind of seeing what goes. Don't know if anything will happen, but you know, you just never know. You just never know. So, all right. Well, it has died down about half of what it was.
I'd say so. It's supposed to pick up though, I think.
Yeah, it's a quarter moon tonight, so maybe half. I'll turn here what we've got. There we go. All right. So I've been thinking about this a little bit, and just where, I'll have to ask the guest, but I'm thinking when he saw this thing standing up in the road, I'm wondering if it wasn't right over in that direction, right there. Right there. I don't think it was over there in that direction, somewhere over there. I'm almost certain it was in that direction, right over there. And this is this direction here. We went to the restroom just a minute ago. We went to the main comfort station. My son and I got in my Jeep. We drove down there. And we've had a park attendant drive by twice. She waved at us, didn't stop. And we went down here, and there's nobody. We are the only ones in this whole campground. I don't know how many tent sites there are. I think there might be a few up on top where there's a pavilion up there. I don't know how many are around this lake area right here, but we are the only ones here. We were just saying this is a perfect night, aside from even the winds died down. Just out and about with the campfire is just perfect. We love this kind of weather, and it sure beats being sweating in your tent. This is going to be nice tonight. We may not, I don't know if we'll use a heater or not. I mean, we've got a propane heater, Big Buddy heater if we need it, but it's really nice. So I'll be up, like I said, I'll do some walk around tonight. So we'll come out here and take a look. I'm gonna get the game camera set up. Who knows? We might get something. So while the evening is setting in here, again, it's such a beautiful night here. Sometimes people ask me over the years, what really is the story that terrifies me the most or that I've heard, and there's a handful of them. But each one has its own terror, if you will, or strangeness or bizarre eeriness. But some of the ones that stick out to me, there was one that I never got to air, or post rather. I did the interview. It was actually about a 3.5-hour interview, and at the very end, the gentleman just said, "I don't want this posted because there was a person that lost his life, and he couldn't handle it very well. So I did this 3.5-hour interview, and then I could never post it." But here's the story that he gave me. Basically, and I'm going to kind of get to the point and not draw this out an hour. But this gentleman worked up in Canada, and way up in timber country, and he was working with some guys, and they were cutting an area they were told to cut, and they get on the radio. There is a what they call it, and I could be using the term incorrectly, but they called it the box. And the box was their communication center. And this guy was the guy that communicated with them. I guess they had helicopters come in with some supplies. And he said, "You guys got to get here right now. There's something going on. There's something hitting the box." And the guy said, "Well, what do you mean something's hitting the box?" He says, "You got to get." He was frantic. And so the guys jumped in the truck, and it was a good haul. And as they were approaching this communications box, it was, I imagine it's something like a cargo container or a sea container, and it's up off the ground, and that's where they have their radio controls, communications. They have a tower probably attached, kind of high on a mountain. And they get there, and then this is daylight now. And the guy is inside the box. He's yelling. And there is this thing, this creature. It's on 2 legs standing, has 2 arms, a torso. It's shaped like a human, but it's ramming this, literally ramming this with its body, though, not its head, but its body, and it's knocking this cargo container. Shaking it, and it's just ramming it with its upper body. Boom. And this thing's not massive. This is not like 8 or 9 feet and 600 pounds. It's as big as a regular human man, but it's not a human. The guy that I was interviewing states that its features were very pronounced. It's like it was malnourished, but it wasn't. It had very definitive cheekbones. Everything was sharp features. Its chin came to a point, had sharp features. Its eyes were sunken in, but yet you could still see the eyes. Its ears were pointed. Its skin looked like it was burnt, but it wasn't. And the skin had like this gray-green hue to it, this coloration. And he said that the guys, they got out of the truck and they had guns, and they fired at it, and this thing turned and looked at them, and he said that it gave this, he said it was like a snake, like a hissing sound, yell. It's hard to describe. It really wasn't a yell like we would yell, or like you hear a lot of these Sasquatches yell and things like that. It didn't shake their insides. It was like a hissing sound, like, you know, like that. But it was really pronounced, really loud. And the guys were freaking out. So these guys are timber guys, right? And they just fired up on this thing like crazy, and it dropped, and the guy inside the sea container, the box, he was freaked out. He was beyond frantic, beyond scared, and he was still yelling and screaming. And this creature fell to the ground on the outside, and these guys were kind of surrounding it. I guess I gather there was like 3 or 4 of these guys with firearms. It fell. While it was laying on the ground, it was bleeding out. He said that the blood wasn't normal. It had a green coloration to it. It wasn't red. And in the meantime, one of the guys went to the box to check on the guy there, the comms guy, and he was hysterical. He was just completely in shambles emotionally. He was in pieces. He couldn't put himself together. This thing had been banging on this sea container, the comm center, the box, for a long time, and this guy was uncontrollable. And they were trying to calm him down. At the same time, they called in for a helicopter, and they said, hey, we got something up here we killed. I don't know what it is. You guys got to get up here right now and get this thing, somebody. Well, long story short, a helicopter came. I think there was 2. I could be wrong about that. I'm trying to remember. This has been such a long ago. I still have the raw audio and everything. And again, I've never played it for you guys because this guest told me that I couldn't, and I listened to what he wanted, but I sure wish I could have. And again, this is one of the most bizarre stories I've heard. And so the helicopter came, and who stepped out of it was a Mountie, a Canadian Mountie. Now, a Canadian Mountie is the equivalent of like a federal park ranger or ranger. And I think there was some other people that like in hazmat suits, and they had flamethrowers. You know, like a flamethrower gun, and they had a pack on. And these guys, these lumber guys, were like, what's going on? In the meantime, before the helicopter came, one of the lumber guys was with one of the guys that's the comm center guy in the box, trying to console him. And this guy that I spoke to said that he went over to this creature that was on the ground, and it looked very alien-like. He's never seen anything like it in his life. He took a Spyderco knife, and back then Spyderco was kind of everybody had a Spyderco. It was the cool knife to have. Some of you know what I'm talking about. He had a Spyderco, and he flipped it out, and they're really sharp. And it's bleeding this green from them shooting it multiple times. And he was trying to cut a piece of skin off, he said, he didn't know what it was. And in trying to cut a piece of skin off, he said, I couldn't cut the skin. My Spyderco knife could not penetrate the skin. It was like impenetrable. It's like I saw my knife was trying to cut it, but I couldn't. I couldn't cut even a little bit of a sample of the skin off, Lance. He said it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Our bullets penetrated it, but it wasn't damaged to the level that it should have been. And it was bleeding. I couldn't cut any skin off of it. And I just thought that was bizarre. So I put my knife away, and I'm still looking at this thing, and we're talking about this, me and the other guys. So the helicopter comes. It comes with a Mountie, and it comes with some other people. These guys that have flamethrowers. And the Mountie pulls us to the side, and while he's talking to us, these other guys with flamethrowers, they load this creature's body up in like this barrel. It looked like a barrel, he said, and it had a lining in it, and they put this creature's body in there. They put the lid on. They lift it up and they put it on the outside of this helicopter, and they strap it, kind of like the helicopters you would see in the movie, the TV series MASH, how it had like the wounded would be on each side of the helicopter. It was kind of like that. It was like a carrying place for this barrel. Then these guys with flamethrowers came in there, and right where it was bleeding, they took flamethrowers and they completely burnt the whole ground. They fried the ground. In the meantime, this Mountie is talking to us, and he's trying to get between us and what these guys are doing with the flamethrowers. And he said, the Mountie basically said this in so many words: you can't tell people what you saw. What's it going to take to keep quiet? And basically what he was telling us is, what's this going to cost? What do we need to pay you guys in order to keep quiet? So it wasn't like a threat, you guys can't talk, and that was it, and they left. It was, what was it going to take monetarily wise, money wise? And I can't remember now what the money amount was per guy, but he threw out a number. And this Mountie, and I don't know how, if he really was a Mountie, but that's what the eyewitness said he was. And they threw out a number. This guy that I was interviewing threw out a number, and he said it's going to be X amount of money per, like, I don't remember, 20, 25,000. I don't even remember now. I'm just throwing that out. But it was along those lines. And the Mountie didn't question. He goes, all right. But when you take this, you can't say a word. Can't tell anyone about this, what happened up here. Because they were the only ones up in this country, up in this province. And I don't know which province it was, but they immediately were paid. The flamethrower guys came in there. They burnt the ground right where this blood was, this green, grayish blood. They took this alien-like thing, creature, but it was how the eyewitness said that Mountie behaved like this happens every once in a while. It was a very bizarre behavior. He was matter of fact, paid the guys their money within a couple days. I think within that week, they had to, they paid everybody that sum of money. They were on a break. I'll put it this way. Within a given year, I think is the period of time. Within the given year, the guy that was a communications guy in that box had kind of like a nervous breakdown. Couldn't take it. Couldn't deal with what he saw, what was happening to him when he was up there by himself until the guys came. And I think he committed suicide. So it just goes to show you that these are some of the most bizarre stories, and there's so many more that I've acquired over since 2017. I just, my head's full of them. But that was one of the most bizarre, scariest. It wasn't at night, thank gosh. But unfortunately, it really plays on the psyche of people to see something so frightening and see something so aggressive. From the last show, those two young girls in high school in Tennessee, they encountered a creature that was not aggressive, thank goodness. But it just goes to show you, people aren't ready to see something like this. Most people aren't. So, again, it sounds very surreal. I'm even talking about this. But, it begs the question, is it better to know something exists or not? And I think it is better to know Not to say you can predict when and where, because you can't, but knowing something exists is a lot better, at least for me personally. And that way, if the time presents itself, you're ready to a certain degree. You're not, but you are. I kind of ride the fence on that. It's kind of like armchair quarterbacking. You know, it's easy to say what you would have done or not done in a case or a situation when you hear a story online, these podcasts, interviews. But until you're there at that moment, you really don't know what you would have done, because fear really takes over the primitive part of our brain and our nervous system. And it's the three parts that typically are: you freeze in place, you flee, or you fight. And that's the primitive part of the brain that basically, that's what fear does. It completely hijacks or pushes out the logic part of the brain, which is that frontal cortex that says, wait a minute, I have a firearm, wait a minute, I've got a light, wait a minute, I've got a hatchet, or I'm going to stand my ground. So that's what fear does. Fear does not create logic. It's only reactive. So, and we react based on past experiences, how you grew up, and any emotional traumas you've had in the past. But you can tolerate things better if you've got knowledge. And aside from that, the most important for me personally is your belief, your faith. And that's just personally with me. Are you a Christian? Are you protected? And if you truly believe that and understand that, then I don't walk in fear. I don't. Are these creatures frightening to see? Of course. Are they terrifying to look at and understand, and what are they doing here? Of course. But I know who I am in Christ, and I know that He is going to do what's best for me. And He's going to give me the logic and the know-how to behave and to act a certain way should that time present itself. And that's just the way Lance takes it. But not everybody's built that way. And again, it's easy to say something when you haven't encountered what many of these people have encountered at such a close proximity, at such a close encounter. So, but these people didn't know anything like that existed until that just fraction of that millisecond. And they weren't prepared emotionally, mentally. So I don't blame them, really. It's just really hard to hear that someone cannot cope so well that they feel that they have to take their life. That's really sad. So that's one of the most bizarre encounter stories that I really not ever got to tell you guys. That's just one of a handful. I've done interviews 2-3 hours, and then at the very end the person says, you know what, I've thought about this, I don't want you to post it. And I abide by their wishes. But anyway, I just wanted to share that one with you. Of course, the guys still talked about it. The lumber guys still talked about what they shot at, what it was, and they never really came up with a name. The guy that I interviewed did draw me a picture, and believe it or not, it looked a lot like the profile. He drew me a profile picture. It looked a lot like the interview I did with Jeff that he sculpted, the alien. It looked a lot like that on the profile from the side. You know which one I'm talking about too. So it looked a lot like that one. So was it alien? Was it terrestrial? I don't know. I don't know. Again, this was a first-person account, and I'm only taking this. This is a very subjective encounter story, first person, but how he told me, how he delivered it to me, I can only take it that he was telling me the truth on that one. It was so bizarre. I just can't imagine anyone making up anything like that. And for me to finally, for him to say, you know what, don't use this. Don't use this. To me, that just resonates with truth. It's not fiction, it's nonfiction. So anyway, I want to share that with you here. And it's coming up, the wind's kind of picking up a little bit more. It's still, moon's out here. We've had a couple people come in the campground here. One guy came in with a truck. He might be setting up a little bit further. He was going to set up, I think, kind of close, but he went on here. It's cool, but it's not like terribly cold right now, but it's, how cold do you think it is, son?
More like 50.
Probably 50 degrees. But we got a warm fire with some hot coals going. I got some water going. Here after a bit, my son will lay down and I'll stay out here and do some filming, some more filming. And I'll get a little bit of sleep, but I'll probably wake up periodically and just check things out. It'll be really hard to hear anything walking around. If there is anything, you know, I doubt that, but if there is, it's kind of hard to hear because the wind's blowing, trees are moving, things like that. It's going to be impossible to really hear anything. But I'll try to get a little bit of sleep and then wake up occasionally and come out here and get a hot drink, walk around with infrared, do that. We'll see what happens, guys. And I thought what I thought was going to be a terrible night ended up being a great night to come out here. So, all right. Well, I'll keep you guys abreast of things, and we'll go from there. I don't see anything here on the road. And I'm going to stay up a little bit. My son is in the tent already, so I'm going to stay up, see if I can see eye shine, anything like that. So I'll stay for a little bit. I'll try to get some sleep. I've got the camera up over here. It's right there. So I can see the infrared's on. But I moved a little bit. I've got a sensitivity. It's probably going to be a million pictures of me. But I've got anything that comes up the back, because this is this right here goes right down to the lake. Right here. And it just drops off. It just drops off the edge right here. So Beautiful. See all the stars. We've got a hot fire burning here. I'm just going to get some electrolytes here. Been drinking a lot of coffee here, so I'll sit here for a little bit longer, then I'll rest up, close my eyes, and then come back out, kind of back and forth and back and forth, and do that. I'm trying to get just a few hours of shut-eye, and I'll wake up in a couple hours, and then I'll go outside and film some more, so I'm not so exhausted come tomorrow, so I'll film here in a couple hours. Okay, and moon is out. Campfire going. Anything going on.
Waking up, it's gone. It leaves us feeling cold again. Picking up the storms our hands were made to feel. And moments like these, they show us what we've got when we ain't got a thing. We've got us.
Good morning, everybody. So, it is incredibly windy this morning. I mean, incredibly windy. It was all night. I think the gusts were blowing a lot more than 45 miles an hour. So, everything was moving around last night. You couldn't tell one thing from another. There were some branches falling, hitting the ground, dead branches. So it was kind of a busy night. I stepped out a couple times just to look around, and I really didn't hear. I know there was a couple people that went last night. One guy in a noisy truck, I heard him fired up again down there, so I don't know if he had a tent or if he was, I can't imagine he would be fishing. It was way too windy. So, but anyway, got around here and we're gonna get some coffee. It's really too windy right now to even try to build a fire. So we're gonna use my son's kind of jet boil to get some coffee going and get around. And, but nothing happened last night. So, at least that I'm aware of. And it was just a busy, very windy morning, overcast. It's not drizzly, but the lake down here is white capping. I'll take you out here in a second and let you look here. I'm going to start getting some water boiled up so we can get some coffee. Hello everybody. I wanted to do a summary, as I always do with each show, and I thought I'd take advantage of it on my front porch. Fall is my favorite time of the year because when it gets cold, I don't have to fight with wasps, ticks, or mosquitoes. So I'm going to take full advantage of this and come out here on my porch and drink my coffee and kind of go over the summary of this last show. First off, I just want to say, do you like kind of the show format? This was the first in a series of shows. I've already filmed some, I've just not posted them yet. And it's kind of what I call the encounter site campouts. And I was privileged enough to have my son, he wanted to come along, where we've kind of made a commitment or a goal this year in 2026 to, he's going to be outrigging his truck and I'm going to be outrigging the Jeep a little bit more, where instead of setting up a tent on the ground like you saw, I'll just have a rooftop tent on my Jeep and he'll have his own kind of rooftop tent on his truck, and we're just going to rig out the units and so each vehicle. So basically it's kind of self-contained. We just park, level, and there you go. We'll be able to tent in remote locations. But I just kind of wanted to go over the show. First off, again, what did you think? Now, I'm not used to typically camping in a state park where there was a sighting, having manicured lawns and people driving around. Now, there wasn't a lot of people there because October, and especially the wind and rain that we encountered prior to getting to the park, but even during us camping, most people are not hardcore. They're not going to camp. Rightfully so. So we were the only ones in that campground there. But a couple things to note. Of course, we didn't see anything, at least that I'm aware of, unless many of you see something that I didn't in the footage. But there was, if you go back to the show, right here is that show. If you go back to the show where I was interviewing this guest, there was two brothers that stayed there at that park at Tent Site 1, and in 2023 they had a DOGMAN encounter. Very bizarre. You just have to go back and listen to this show. And I didn't notice it until I actually got there to the park. And after I got through on the campout, I went to the guest. I called him back and I started looking at some of the Google Earth pics he sent me prior to us doing the show. And I was just looking at it and it didn't look right. I thought, something doesn't look right where we stayed and where he's saying him and his brother stayed at Campsite 1. Well, come to find out, at October 28, 2023 to present, 2025, they have moved Campsite 1. Campsite Tent Area 1 is no longer where him and his brother were located. It's about 200 yards further up the road. It's still on the same side of the road, which would be to the right, but it's up further, and there is a picnic table and a fire ring there. And as you saw, my son and I parked right across the paved road was our parking. He said, "No, we didn't have that, Lance." I said, "Did you have a fire ring?" He said, "Yes, but there was no picnic table." And so while I was there, I drove after the fact, after we attended, I called him. And so I went back and I saw where he had tent camped, and they don't allow tent camping in that spot anymore, which was very interesting. Now you can only tent camp at designated spots. And I'm sure, I don't know this for a fact, but my dad was in the state parks for years. I grew up in Oklahoma State Parks. and my dad retired from Oklahoma State Parks as a manager. And back then, you had to go to the main office and check in, and you'd have a ranger come by and collect your tent fee or RV fee or whatever. And now you don't even need to go to the main office. So back when these brothers went to the park, they had to check in at that time at the main office. I didn't. Everything was online. You submit your tag number of your car, how many people are going to be staying with you, and what is their, do they have a car, and if so, what's their tag number, what's the color, make, model, all that stuff. So you don't really have to go to the main office anymore, which I didn't. Now the week before, or 2 weeks before, I did stop at the main office just to kind of see what it was like in there, and it was really interesting. I got an interesting look. I described the ladies too, after I went to the main office and drove around where the tent site was at. I just wanted to get a mind's eye of what I'm looking at, how level the ground was, what gear I needed to bring. And so I just kind of drove through the park, and I called the guest from the show, one of the brothers, and he said, yeah, was that lady there? She looked like this and this. I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, that's the same one that had that weird look. Well, I had a Bigfoot shirt on, an Oklahoma Bigfoot shirt, and I was talking to another lady in there, but that one in the back, she was just kind of looking at me, looking at the shirt, looking down at me, or not looking down at me, but looking at my shirt, looking up at me, looking down at the shirt, looking up at me, just kind of, thinking me over. But they were pleasant, and that was the only time I went to the main office, was that 2 weeks prior to the stay. But, so, when the two brothers went to the park during that time again, they had to check in at the main office, and it was a different campsite. So there was a fire ring, he said, at their campsite, but it's no longer there. So since that time, it's not necessarily unusual for things to change in a state park. Again, growing up in a state park, my dad, they always would change areas because of flooding issues or drainage issues, or they wanted to accommodate more guests, or it was better, who knows the reasoning, but they did move it again, and you can only camp at designated camp spots that have this flexible pole. It's got a reflective sign on it with a QR code that you scan that says, this is campsite 1, this is campsite 2, this is campsite 3, and so on and so forth. And I think that there was about 30 campsites, 30 plus, but we were the only ones in the whole entire camp area in that finger. It's kind of like a little peninsula. It's called Red Carpet Country is what they designated the name of that. And when you go in, there's a really nice sliding, it looks like a residential gated community gate, really nice. And he said, no, I just told the guest, he said, no, we didn't have that back then, Lance. It was just you get out, manually open the gate and close it. So there's been a couple of things changed since 2023. Now, again, things change in parks and things get built, things get taken away. But I just thought it was very interesting to note that they changed campsite 1 to another location down the road as campsite 1. So where I thought I was staying at the exact same spot as the brothers, I wasn't. But then again, I couldn't, because it wasn't a designated camp spot. I saw where they were at, and I'll let you guys, I'll note that here in this summary where they were at and where I was at in comparison. Another interesting thing to note that I thought has always been I've been kind of dumbfounded, to be honest. Most of the encounter, almost all of them on the interviews that I do, I remember. I just don't forget them, especially if there's oddities or aspects of an interview that just puzzles me. And one of it, if you go back to that show, the brother that was with the guest that I interviewed, the other brother, he awoke early in the morning. I don't recall exactly the time. I'll say between 2 and 3, to hearing drums. If you recall that, he heard drums, and it sounded like to him it was someone playing drums that couldn't play them very well, like native drums. And he was puzzled, so he sat up and he was listening to this bum 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 bum. It was out of rhythm. And I never forgot that. I thought, what in the world is drums, native drums, have to do with this encounter site, if any at all? Is there any association? And some things may not be. He went back to sleep. But when everything in the encounter happened and afterwards, he did tell his brother that, hey, I heard drums prior to you waking me up with seeing that creature. So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind while we were there. And as you saw, it was terribly windy. The wind gusts were between 40 and 50, maybe even more at times. It was just really hard, and the leaves were dry. So that's really, you couldn't really tell on, toward the end of the shots that I put there in the show, you could hear the leaves rustling on the trees. It was very, very loud. I heard some thuds. There was a thud that I heard around 10:45. And now there's, I don't know, it sounded like it was over there by the cars. So that's why I'd no sooner laid down, I got back up and went outside. But I could have sworn that around 2 a.m. when I did that check, I didn't note it because I wasn't quite sure if I heard, but when I was laying down, I could hear a thum, 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 da, thum, 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 something like that. It was in between when the wind would die down, in between the lulls of wind. And I laid there thinking, am I hearing what I'm hearing? Now, Highway 412 is across the lake. If you stand on the back of the campsite and look kind of west-northwest, you can see the causeway of traffic. It's a 4-lane, and it goes right over Lake Keystone. And you can hear the cars in the distance. And you can hear semi-trucks jake braking, coming down, gearing down, coming off, going west. And so I thought, you know, I was listening to the traffic. None of that sounded like drums, though. None of it. It sounded just like cars. And the semi-trucks sound like semi-trucks. Now, I thought to myself, what else would sound like a drum? Now, in Oklahoma, especially at western Oklahoma, but I grew up, we were at a state park in western Oklahoma called Little Sahara State Park, and there was a lot of oil wells. So when they get through putting an oil rig up, afterwards, if it's an oil well that's still producing, they'll put a, basically it's a pump site. And it's still producing a little bit of oil or some type of petroleum distillant, and they'll put a diesel motor out there. It's basically a big motor that just runs and runs and runs, and they call it a pump jack. Or in it's basically an oil well like you typically see, and it's run by a motor, and it pops a lot, and it's very distinctive sound, bum 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 bum. And as the wind comes and goes, it sounds like drums. Boom, 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 boom. But I know what those sound like because I grew up around this part, and I grew up for years hearing that as a teenager and deer hunting. And I didn't hear anything like that when we first got there. Those don't stop. They just keep running and running and running and running, as many of you know. I did not hear that when we got there. I've never heard that being there previous. So I don't think it was a pump jack in the distance, because those run all the time. I got a train coming through here, so it's going to get loud maybe for a second. That was one of the reasons why we bought this place. The train is only about 150 yards down there. But I tell you what, I'll take a break from this here, and then when the train goes by, I'll pick right back up here. All right, train's by. It's just a little easier to talk here. So I mention all that because I swore that I heard some faint drum sounds around 2:30 in the morning. And here's what's really bizarre. When I heard that, I was still kind of in a half asleep state. I didn't get up and take a look around, but it sounded like the drums beats were behind our vehicles up on the hill, somewhere in that direction. It's kind of hard to tell. I didn't get out to check, but it sounded like it from how I was laying in the tent. I'll put it that way. And that dome tent that we have really amplifies sound quite a bit in those tents because it was a really tight tent. So you can hear a lot of different sounds in that thing. But I sat there and I thought, is this an area that used to be an old native campground? Or what was here before this lake area, this state park? And my mind was turning with that as I was half asleep. And I mentioned that to the guest that I interviewed, and I said, I think I heard a little bit of faint drum sounds. It didn't last very long. I probably heard maybe 4 or 5 thumps. Thump, 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 something like that. I couldn't be sure, but it sounded different than anything I'd heard that night. Let's just say that. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that the location of the campsite had changed. The addition of this nice gate that was in the same place of the old gate, but it was a nice gate, an automated gate. Not that that had anything to do with it. It's just, some changes in the last 2 years. And that was really about it. The only thing to add to that night stay was this. I never got a feeling that we were being watched, but I did get this feeling that we shouldn't be there, if that makes any sense. And when I talked to the guest after we had stayed there, I thought I'd just call him. We talked about a lot of different things, the campsite, the gate, and all this stuff. And he actually said the same thing. He said, Lance, that is incredible, because I got the same feeling that it was just a strange vibe or a feeling that we weren't supposed to be there. And I said, yeah, I couldn't put it into words, but that's exactly how I felt. It wasn't necessarily a creepy feel, but it was more or less a solemn, solitude type of feel, a lonely feel that we just weren't supposed to be there in that area. And I can't really describe it any other way besides that. Just a strangeness. And I always tell people when they go out, listen to your intuition, whether you want to call it the Holy Spirit, or listen to that inner voice, because that's usually giving you the right information. But we continued to stay. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't worried, of course. Now, the park attendant, they don't close that gate at night. So I'm not sure when they close that gate and for what. I don't know. I thought that was strange. That was going through my mind. Why would they put a gate there? Because I would think you can, if you want to brave the elements, you could camp or tent, in the wintertime if you wanted. So maybe I should ask sometime. But that's all. It was just a strange vibe, a feeling that we weren't supposed to be there. But of course, that park has been there a long time and been there many, many years. Now, one more thing to add is that park back in 2016 and even maybe earlier, there was some people that I know had called in, some eyewitnesses, and they called in on some other podcast shows that stated they had had a creature like this canine dogman creature come up behind their tent while they were tenting in that same area. And that goes back to 2016, maybe even earlier. There may have been something going on earlier. And I told the guest this, the brother, and he said that he had heard something similar. Now, what's interesting, we both talked about this, is that we believe that him and his brother, when they got there, someone had already had an encounter sighting. That's why all those blacked out SUVs were there. That's why the park people at the office were acting weird. That's why the park ranger was kind of directing where these brothers camp. He was kind of blocking off these, because when you go into the area, you can make this turn, you can make that turn, you can make that turn, you can make that turn. And the park ranger was kind of keeping goalie to make sure that they went into this tent area. And if you go back to that show, you'll know what I'm talking about when he talks about that. So we believe that there were some things already going on. Someone had had a sighting, an encounter, maybe multiple people. We don't know. But that park has a history of people seeing these creatures there. How far back it goes, I don't know. But I thought that was really interesting too, with the rich history of that. And again, I know in 2016, possibly 2015, but possibly earlier, that whole area really has a rich history of encounter sightings. And you could follow that whole shoreline of Keystone, and it's in the dark. There's no lights down there, so you could literally start anywhere around that lake and end up in the park if you follow that shoreline. You could go right into the park right there, easy, boom, get in, get out. And it's kind of rough around the shoreline. You got big boulders and rocks, but if you're agile and you have agility and strength and speed, it'd be no problem for you. For a human, you need a flashlight. It'd take hours and hours to get around that lake. Hours. You just twist an ankle, break a leg or whatever, and you're near the water line and all that. So I just wanted to note some of those things. I thought it was important. Let me know what you guys think. One thing to add that's not really affiliated with the show at all, that I want to know what you guys think, if this would be of interest to you. Wiley Dave, and by the way, this series, I'm not going to make it a separate channel. I'm just going to add it to the Monster 911 channel where I do interviews. And then when I do Camp Out series, I'm going to be just adding it to the same channel. I'm not going to create a separate channel. Is that Wiley Dave and I will be doing some shows in the field. I think it will be very interesting. It will be interactive. It'll be, I'll see if we can make it live sometimes, but I'm going to take you along with us calling at night in some of the encounter site areas that people have had encounters with this creature. And Wiley Dave, many of you know, or many of you may not know, he used to be a professional predator hunter. He was hired by farmers to eliminate and take out coyotes, bobcat, mountain lions for killing cattle. Well, also Wiley Dave is a very talented predator call maker. And he used to sell a lot of his calls way back in the day, 70s and 80s. And he made a special call, and he tunes all of his calls. And the first time he used one of these special calls was out in western Oklahoma. And of course, I did this show right here, and he used a call he made, and it ironically and oddly enough called in one of these DOGMAN creatures out in western Oklahoma. So I finally, after years of talking to Dave, got him to agree to make a DOGMAN call. He was really reluctant on when I said we need to offer this to people that may want to have something like this, because not many people, this is a very odd, unique item. And he said, I don't know about that. So he said no to me for about 3 to 5 years, somewhere in there. He says, no way, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. So anyway, I finally got him to agree to do it. It's going to be, it's going to tell the story of Dave's encounter, and Dave is going to sign each call. And it's going to be tuned by Wiley Dave, and it's going to be the Wiley Dave DOGMAN call. And I'm going to try to have it available soon. I don't know when that is, because Wiley Dave's busy and some other things, but we talked about it last night, and he's agreed to it. So we're going to see how it goes. It's not going to be astronomically priced, And if you guys are interested in having a Wiley Dave Dogman call, let me know in the comments. It was just an idea I had some years ago. Dave said no, but now he said yes. But I've got to have a disclaimer in there, was his agreement. I got to put that we're not responsible if you're out in the field and you call one of these up. I can't promise it'll happen. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm just saying that I've got to put a disclaimer in there for Dave to agree to make these calls for me so we can have it available through the show. So let me know if you're interested in one of these calls. It's a very unique item. It's hand-tuned by Wiley Dave. Each one is hand-tuned. Dave literally makes these out of his house. He makes them one by one. So let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in having one of these. It'll come in a special box. It'll have the story. It'll have a disclaimer. And it'll be the Wiley Dave Dogman call. And if he's the expert of that. So anyway, guys, I'm sorry this ran kind of long here on the summary, but I thought it was some interesting points to note for the show. If you like this style of show, let me know. It's not always I get to be in a manicured state park, but I thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd take advantage of the anniversary date. And that's another thing. Some of these shows that I do, I'm big about anniversary dates because I think these creatures follow certain weather patterns and different seasons, different temperatures, different amounts of light, all those things. We don't know if there's migration patterns or there's a lot of weather-related. I think there is weather-related issues associated with when these creatures are seen and encountered. So I like to try and be close to an anniversary date of an encounter site of a guest that I've had. So I'm going to start doing more of those in the field for you guys. It will be along the same lines of the show that you watched, but most of those will be in more remote locations than a state park. But wherever it's at, I'll try to be there if I can. Oh, as a quick reminder, guys, I just wanted to add a picture that I requested of the winner of the 50,000 subscriber giveaway. She was very sweet in sending me it back. She said that she's proudly displaying it on her wall, and that really makes me feel good and honored that she would do that. So I love doing those things for you guys. It makes me, it pleases me, and I wish I had one for everybody out there that subscribes. But that one was custom made by me, and it was just an idea that came across, and I enjoyed making it. And I'm glad that she's watches the show, of course, but gets to display it in her home. It's an interesting talking point and a talking piece. So I appreciate all of you, and the next milestone is 100,000 subscribers, and we'll get there together. You're a part of me, and I'm a part of you, and without you, there wouldn't be any show. I do read the comments. I don't get to read all of them because there are a lot of them. You guys really comment well. In the meantime, guys, I always appreciate you following the shows, commenting, sharing, liking, and subscribing. Until then, guys, always be safe out there. Tell someone where you're going. And, you know, to see these creatures, you can never be prepared for it. As Wiley Dave said, no one's ready for this. No one. And the best thing you can do is just understand that we are not alone out there, nor are we alone in the skies or in the seas. But at least having the understanding and knowledge that something exists that's beyond our explanation kind of gets you a little mentally prepared. I know for me, I will not be deterred. The woods and is my passion. I love it. My son loves it, and I'm not afraid. And what keeps me going to do what I do is you guys and my faith. The Lord's going to protect me, and to be calm if such an event happens or if I see anything, and being prepared, having contingency plans. So in the meantime, be safe if you go out. Watch each other's back, tell someone where you're going, and plan for contingencies. Take care, guys. I love all you guys. And in the meantime, always remember, we're never alone when in the wilderness. Take care, guys.
The sun ain't up, I'm out the door. Alarm clock screaming, boots hit the floor. Work comes first, that's how it goes. Mud on my boots, grease on my clothes. Blue collar man, hard and true. I don't say much, but I'll die for you. Oh, grease on my hands, I don't give a damn. The world keeps turning on the blue collar man. I don't chase holidays, I don't buy frills. Hand you my check, covers the bills. Old truck rumble, heavy load bound, working this life just to hold my ground.